Welcome to the Jerry Acuff Show. I'm Jerry, your host, and I started this podcast to bring to you people who are doing incredible things. I've always been fascinated by those who have found their greatness, and I'm excited to share the secrets of their success. Let's meet today's guest. Welcome to the Jerry Acuff Show. We are super excited today to have Chris Penn as our guest, and Chris is quite an accomplished young man. He is an exceptional, and I'm say exceptional because I have watched him speak, marketing keynote speaker. You need a marketing keynote speaker, you better call him. He writes a great free newsletter. He has spoken for companies like IBM and at Wharton. He's an expert on cognitive marketing and artificial intelligence. He's been written about by the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Business Week, and U.S. News. And that alone impresses me, but he ain't done because he's also been on PBS, CNN, CNBC, and ABC News. He's a graduate of Franklin and Marshall, which I'm very familiar with, having lived in New Jersey, and I can tell you, you don't get into Franklin and Marshall with my GPA in high school. It's a wonderful, wonderful school. He also has a master's degree from Boston University School of Management, and we are excited to have him on our show today. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Thank you for having me so much.
So tell us your story. I mean, how did you go from, let's just say Boston, where you got your master's? How'd you go from there to becoming a marketing expert in today and tomorrow's world?
I actually have a background in IT, and even before that. So I left Franklin and Marshall with a degree in government political science with a specialization in stateless transnational terrorism. And I don't have much use for that anymore. But I moved to Boston actually to go study with a particular martial arts teacher who I still train with today. And I got my an information systems degree out of BU. And what happened was over the span of from 2000 to 2010, I worked in financial services for a while, and then I started this startup called the Student Loan Network. And I was the CIO, I was the CTO, and I was the guy who cleaned the restroom on Fridays because it was a 3-person company. And what happened over time was my CEO would say, can you update the server, and they update the email server, and eventually it started becoming, can you just send the email? Can you update the website? Can you do these things? And it made the transition from pure technology into what we now call marketing technology. And with the advent not only of the internet, but really the smartphone back in 2007, that turned marketing into technology. And now I think the latest stat is somewhere that 89 to 90% of all people in America 12 and up, this is an Edison research stat, have a smartphone now.
Wow. That's unbelievable. So how did you establish yourself as an expert, though, to go from that to doing these keynotes at the places that you've spoken at?
I hesitate to call myself an expert. That's a title somebody else confers upon you. But I was early in social media. I was early in podcasting and early in analytics and marketing technology and stuff. And as these fields grew, organizations and companies said, well, who can tell us what we should be doing with these things? And as an early adopter who broke a lot of things and made a lot of mistakes, I had the perspective to say, well, here's what you should do, and here's a really long list of what you should not do. And that's how that reputation came around.
But one of the things I find, I'm rated one of the top 5 sales experts in the world. Some website said that I was one of the 50 greatest salespeople of all time. And I always say, oh, who the votes on this stuff? And then I think to myself, well, if my ex-wife would stop voting, I'd probably be higher. And but seriously, I do think that if you have what you have, which is rich experience, and in your own way you have a formulaic approach to solving these problems, I think you earn the title of expert. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely agree. It's experience. In the martial arts, we say it's a three-legged stool. It's theory, it's application, and then it's experience. You need all three. You can't have just one or two because you can't sit on a two-legged stool. Well, I guess you can, but it's not going to be very comfortable.
So what was the martial art?
It's called ninjutsu. It's a Japanese sort of battlefield martial art from the 1300s to the 1500s, still practiced today.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a 17-year-old son, 18-year-old. I'd say 17, was 18 yesterday. And just for good measure, I have a 42-year-old daughter. So you got to spread them apart. And but my 17-year-old is into ancient weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also next month getting his black belt in karate.
Mm-hmm.
But he built a 12.5-foot catapult in my house. Well, not in the house. He actually built it outside the house, on the property. But I find that what you just said is so true. It's it's theory, it's application, and it's experience. And if you don't have all of those things together, you're not getting a black belt in karate.
Right.
And
exactly right.
That makes a ton of sense to me. Tell us a little bit about Brain Trust Insights.
So this is a company I co-founded with my my new CEO, Katie Leoy. We started it. The idea started 6 months ago, and really we launched about a month ago. And companies are sitting on an enormous amount of data. According to IBM, as of last year, companies, some of them had up to 90% of the data that they collected they never used. They put it in the digital equivalent of a filing cabinet or a desk drawer and never looked at it again. And they could be making money with it. They could be delivering impact. They in some cases literally could be saving lives, but they're not because they don't have the right combination of people, of process, and of the technological platforms they need to make that data useful. I was doing a research project earlier this week for a casual dining restaurant, and one of the things that they have is these websites like Glassdoor that tell you, like, should I go work for this company or not? Right? They're review sites. Then employees, current and former, leave their reviews. This company has 2,500 reviews on Glassdoor, and and more being added every day. The thing was, it's very difficult for someone to go through and read all 2,500 reviews and figure out what should we be paying attention to. But with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, with these new tools, you can do it in a day. So we did, and we actually found out this quick serve restaurant, they have this dish that's an unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks dish. Customers love it. The staff hates it. They hate it with a passion because corporate regulations say they're only allowed to put a certain number of breadsticks in the basket. And so when customers are like, oh, I want some more breadsticks, they're saying like every 2 minutes they want more breadsticks. And some of the employees have left complaints saying, I am a breadstick slave. That's all I do. And that's the kind of insight that we want as business people, as salespeople, as marketers. We want to know what's going to make people happy or unhappy. I was talking this morning with another company. They in their sales CRM, they collect and record every conversation that their salespeople have. That's a really good idea, right? You want to know what's going to sell. Their daily report is like 500 pages long, and no one reads it. They produce it for the formality. But wouldn't it be great if you could actually digest that down to like a page or two and say, this, sales team, this is what your customers cared about today.
Well, let me go back on the breadstick thing. Is it fair to say because I'm just making this stuff up. But if I had that report and I owned that restaurant, I would raise the price of that dish.
Yeah, you could. You certainly could. That would be the sales tactic of helping to reduce the demand by finding that pricing, variable pricing. But that this particular restaurant chain kind of stakes their reputation on a few of these different dishes and stuff.
Gotcha.
And so
Well, I was just thinking
it's
of
tough.
the fact that if they're paying more, I don't mind giving them more.
Yeah, yeah,
So
no,
I mean that would be a pretty simple thing. How would you describe cognitive marketing to our audience? Because some of these things that you're talking about, like artificial intelligence and predictive analytics, I think most of us, including me, have at best a surface understanding of what they are, and I would even say maybe more important, what will they be?
So cognitive marketing is a term really first used, I believe, by IBM in saying it's developing marketing systems, software, people, and processes that rapidly learn and keep learning. So in the example I was talking about earlier, or actually even in your case, in pharmaceutical sales, you as an individual salesperson, you might be selling, high blood pressure medication or something
Right.
to providers, and what's resonating with people in the field when you're out doing field sales. But you're one salesperson among many. When you have systems, like when you're typing your notes into a system that has artificial intelligence that can take the notes from every salesperson and learn from it, the system itself learns and then can go back and make recommendations. Because you're working with an artificial intelligence, it can then share that data, share all of the experiences that everyone in the sales staff is having, and help everyone make more money and earn more commissions. Like, can you imagine going to a meeting and on your phone, the little indicator with your sales system says, make sure you talk about product X and Y today in this meeting, because that's what everybody in the organization is reporting is the hot thing to talk about. Cognitive marketing lets machines help us do that in ways, again, with all that 90% of the data that we collect but we don't use. It helps us get to that point where we, as marketers and salespeople and business people, we can know what the customer's thinking and give them what they want. And if we do that, they will then give us what we want, which is their money.
Right. So I guess when you say machines, are you talking about computers with algorithms?
Algorithms are the starting point. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're really talking about getting a computer to think like a human in very specific cases. So an algorithm is the basic building block of this. Everybody uses algorithms every day, people and machines.
Right.
Like you in the morning probably brush your teeth a certain way. You put your clothes on a certain way. Some people put their shirt on first. Some people put their pants on first. And that's an algorithm. It's a repeatable process. Now, in old software, classical software, a human would write the software and it would produce data. The way machine learning works is that we now feed machines a lot of data, like all the sales notes from yesterday's field stuff. And the machine, using statistics mostly, writes its own rules, its own software to come up with answers. So we used to make software to produce data. Now we use data to produce software that then produces insights. And it's getting to the point now where there's this field called deep learning, which is the most advanced form of artificial intelligence we have today, where now the machines are crafting the software that crafts the answers. A really good analogy is to think about how we make cars, right? It is possible for a person to make a car. It'll just take a really long time for that one person to assemble a car. When we got the assembly line, that is sort of like machine learning, right? In a
Right.
way, it streamlines the process. And now with deep learning, it's like a sealed factory where the robots make the robots that make the cars. We just go to the factory door, push the big red start button, come back later, and cars come out at the other end.
Gotcha. So, who are the companies that are doing this?
So we call them the Magi. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and IBM are the big four that provide the infrastructure, the technology, the pieces. But a lot of the algorithms and code and building blocks of this actually come from academia. A lot of what we're seeing in the news today about predictive analytics and machine learning and stuff, some of this stuff is 50, 60, 70 years old, or in some cases even older. When I do predictive analytics with one of the algorithms I use, this particular algorithm was written in 1971, but that was the academic theory. It has taken that long. It's taken more than 40 years for us to have the hardware and the software to do it well.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so now these big tech companies are essentially providing the speed and the infrastructure for all of us to not have to invent our own pieces.
Is that what Watson is?
Watson is the most brilliant branding of an AI system I've ever seen. Now, I should disclose I am an IBM champion, which means that per FTC regulations, they do give me non-monetary compensation, mostly T-shirts. But Watson is not a thing. Watson is a series of about 25 or 30 different pieces that can be mixed and matched, assembled to solve different problems. If you were to go to IBM's developer website, you would see all the individual pieces of Watson that you could use in order to solve a problem. So a really good example would be something, one of the services is called Discovery. Now imagine you had, let's say you had all the counterindications for a particular pharmaceutical company, right? Every drug they made, here's the things you shouldn't mix these with. You could load all that text into Watson Discovery, and then Watson could sift it, sort it, categorize it, and help you understand, like, yeah, if I'm going to be selling this class of drugs, I need to make sure that my buyer understands they cannot interact with this class of drugs, even if it's not explicitly said, because there's, all the different drugs have different types of, chemically related. And so that individual piece of Watson could be used to help you sell better.
Gotcha. So is it fair to say that the commercial with Watson in the middle of the grapevines, it means it was singled out to load in all this data about grapes?
Exactly.
So you couldn't take that and put it at my house and say, how do you get your kid to get up in the morning?
No, you couldn't. There isn't a Watson to pick up and remove. The best analogy for it is, like, think of Watson like an entire line of really powerful kitchen appliances. You can use them for all kinds of different things. You can mix and match them, but at the end of the day, you still got to provide the food and the ingredients, and you have to have some idea of what you want it to cook.
Gotcha. Wow, that's fascinating. I'm not sure this is changing the subject, but you once said that marketing lacks profitability. Can you expand your thoughts on that?
So that's one of the problems that this cognitive marketing and this AI can help solve, is that because marketing traditionally takes so long. I mean, think about how long it takes to get a traditional marketing campaign off the ground, and how many people are in it. It's not fast. It's not agile. It's not able to respond to changing business conditions. A really good example of this is, you ever seen like a soft drink ad? That ad probably took like 9 months to put together, between the creative brief and everything. Well, Coca-Cola is experimenting with this now, where a machine assembles 1 million different ads at once, and 999,000 of them are going to be terrible on the first attempt. But as it rolls out these ads and as people click on them or don't, or engage with them or don't, the machine gets smarter while still being able to produce a million ads at a time. And so what you end up with is the ability to find the ads, the right combination of pictures and words and sounds that people like, but in days instead of months.
But I don't think there's any case where that's more true than in digital marketing.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree.
I mean, I can tell you, my marketing digitally is not profitable yet, and it's it's A and B testing, and it's is it Instagram, and where do your people congregate? I mean, it's a boatload of stuff that you have to try and figure out before you actually crack the code.
Exactly. Now, if a machine can do that at massive scale, that's how you get to profitability, because you can figure out what works so much faster. The rule I tell people is, if you do it with a template today, or a defined unchanging process today, a machine will do it without you tomorrow, because you don't need the person in there to copy and paste the same thing over and over again.
Right. So talk a little bit about the data, your ideas behind Data Zero to Marketing Hero.
So that was the subtitle of a book I wrote in a few years ago. It was called Marketing Blue Belt. And the fundamental idea is that if you are in digital marketing today, you have no excuse for not measuring the performance of your marketing and knowing what works and what doesn't. The problem is, most people don't have a good framework for how to do that.
Right. And
if they had that framework and used it, and used the right tools in the right order, they could figure out what works. So it's a pretty straightforward process. You have your data. Do you have your data? Is it good, in good condition? Then comes what we now call the ladder of success for analytics. So descriptive analytics. What happened? Can you explain what you're seeing in the data? This is where a lot of companies are stuck. They either don't have the data, or they can't explain what happened. Then you have the second rung on the ladder, is diagnostic analytics. Why did those things happen? Hey, we sold 40% more stuff yesterday. Okay, why? What can we understand about that? Once you understand what happened and why, the drivers, the third rung is predictive. Okay, if we know the most important things that caused the outcomes we wanted, can we predict those going forward? And most of the time, the answer is yes, to some degree. So predicting what's going to happen next.
Right.
The fourth rung on the ladder is prescriptive analytics. Okay, cool. We know what's likely to happen. What should we do about it? Right? Should we increase our ad spend? Should we put 10 more people in the field? Should we reduce our prices? Or should we increase our prices? And finally, the last layer, the last rung, is proactive analytics, where a machine ideally can do it for you. Almost every company is on the first or second rung of that ladder. Very few are on the third rung, and we haven't really gotten to anybody to those higher levels yet.
Right. So do soft skills like building business relationships and selling skills play a role in this new world of marketing?
They're the only things that will be left. When you think about what artificial intelligence can do in repetitive tasks, massive analysis, what's left for the humans to do are empathy, judgment, compassion, and those human-to-human skills. We, as humans, will probably not want to have a business relationship purely with a machine. The exception being where the customer experience is so terrible that anything would be an upgrade. For example, dealing with your cable company.
Right.
We'll take a machine over that any day.
I did that yesterday.
Exactly. Or, flying on an airplane is become such a miserable experience that we would settle for a non-human experience at that point. But for business relationships where we have interactions with other humans, like in complex sales, those soft skills will be all that will be left.
Gotcha. Well, that makes me feel good because it's the only thing I'm any good at. Is I've written three books on how do you build relationships with people you don't naturally connect with. I actually created an app called Really Linked, and I have 7,600 connections on LinkedIn. But if I reduce them to the people that are crucial to my success, that number is probably 75. So my belief is that if you don't stay in consistent, persistent, relevant contact with people, you lose influence. And so I don't want to do that. So I created this app where I say, okay, make a list of who you really want to be linked to, put them in this app, and you can call them, text them, email them, or email them a meeting request from the app and never have to go into any of the other apps. And you can download them from your phone into Really Linked, and it keeps a contact history of when was the last time you reached out to them, regardless of whether it was a call, an email, or a text. And there's a place for notes. So it's fundamentally a mini CRM for free. Now, I created it for me, and then I put it in the Apple Store, and, I keep thinking that, CRM is so expensive, and most people don't know how to use it, and most people can't afford it. So, I'm hoping somebody will actually, see the value in it and decide that they want to own it rather than me. But I did it to solve my own business problem.
Yeah, and that's where innovation comes from. Now, I actually had a question I wanted to ask you, which is, you've obviously been practicing in business for a while. There's a lot of folks, who are relatively new in their careers. They're 5 or 10 years in, and they've never had a bad time, right? They never experienced the crash of 2008 when subprime loans blew up everything, or the .com era. Based on your perspective, where are we in that boom and bust cycle right now?
Well, I don't know. I always keep saying to myself that, what goes up must come down. And, that's how I advise my financial planner. Don't lose my money. So, I'm not really worried about you making a lot of money on my thing because I'm 69 years old, but don't lose my money. And I do think we're probably due for sometime in the next year or two a correction. I think it'll probably be a result of some, world event like, Russia invades, I don't know, whoever.
Something.
It'll be something like that. I think the way you insulate yourself from self-destruction economically is two ways. One is you're really good at what you do. There's probably three things. One is you're really good at what you do. And when you're great at what you do, then it's pretty easy to stay employed even when others are not employed. Most people aren't great at what they do. The second thing is having a network of people that you can rely on when you are in a situation where your network is what will keep you alive. When I got fired from a job in 2001, which I didn't think I should have been fired. I'd grown their sales by 100%, and I had a disagreement with the CEO, and he fired me. And so, I had to find a job, and I had a network of people, and within 4 months, I'd started a business which now has 30 employees. If I didn't have that network, if Bill Gates' mother wasn't on the United Way campaign in Seattle and introduced him to somebody at IBM, who knows where he would have been. Right. Now, my guess is old Bill would have figured out a way to make a boatload of money anyway because he's brilliant. But my point is you need a network. You need to be great at your job. And I think the third thing, which I think the internet has made a lot easier, is you got to be a lifelong learner. At 69, I'm trying to learn digital marketing. One of the reasons why I'm so fascinated about talking to you, and I hope I get a chance to talk to you again, is because I think you know things and see things that I don't even understand yet. But I think I'm capable of understanding them as long as I could get somebody to teach me.
Right. And that's right.
And so I think the way you insulate yourself from bursts or bubbles is, number one, you have your investments in some place that's pretty safe if the market crashes, which I think that most people ought to have a more balanced portfolio than an aggressive portfolio, but greed plays a huge role in that. And then I think the second thing is being a lifelong learner. I read 25 business books a year, and I read 100 book summaries a year. And the book, in fact, I actually own, Fair Balance. I own 2.5% of the book service that I use, called Read It For Me, because you can do every one of their book summaries in 12 minutes. So, in literally 30 minutes, I'm learning from the best business books, whether it's Grit or Give and Take or my book, The Relationship Edge in Business. And so I think the three things you got to do is you got to have a network, you got to be good at your job, and you got to be a lifelong learner. If you do those things, I think you can get through just about anything.
That is good advice for everybody.
So listen, we're at the end of our time here. You have been a phenomenal guest, and I think, candidly, I think we've only touched the surface on this. And I am going to ask Donna to maybe give you a month's rest and then have you back, because I want to explore some more of this stuff. I'm so impressed with your understanding of this, and I think having our listeners understand where the world is going is really, really important, because one of the things that I keep telling the people in my company, and there's only 30 of them, I said, if you don't understand, and I just use Google and Facebook, I said, if you don't understand what Google and Facebook are trying to do and what these technology companies are trying to do, you are going to be ancient in 5 years.
Yep.
Ancient.
Exactly right.
And so I want to have you on again. I'll tell you before I let you go that you said some things that I thought were really, really fascinating. One is that, and at the end of the day, soft skills still really matter, which I don't think you can teach these machines empathy and judgment and compassion. I do think that you can have this artificial intelligence that will help people be far more efficient and economic at targeting and at marketing. I loved your ladders of success. I love the idea that lots of this stuff comes from academia, and not at all surprised that it's taken 40 years for this stuff to catch up. Somebody told me one time if they found a cure for cancer, it'd be 25 years before it was commonplace therapy. And I loved your explanation of Watson, because it really made it simple for me to understand how that machine does what it does. So I want to thank you for being a guest. You're absolutely a fountain of knowledge. Anybody that needs to have a marketing expert speak is an idiot if they don't call Chris Penn. This guy is unbelievable. And I'm not just talking about from our podcast today. Go on his website and watch him and tell me you don't want that guy speaking to your company. So I will end by telling you what I tell everybody, and you don't need this, Chris, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Be incredible. And thank you for being on the Jerry Acuff Show. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's show, where we met yet another incredible person. As a thank you for listening, I want to extend a special offer. I want to give you 50% off of Jerry Acuff VT, because I want to help you be incredible. Head over to jerryacuffvt.com and use the code JAVT50OFF at the checkout and accelerate your path to finding your greatness.